Hey everyone, this is Joshua Kirk here with you once again, and I'm sort of going to do a different video right here. Usually I'd be reviewing an album or something like that, but today it's a bit of a different video. And this is a list video where I basically mention my top 10 favorite songs by a band that I really like. And in this case, I'm gonna do my top 10 list of my top 10 favorite violent Femmes songs. So that's sort of why I'm wearing this shirt here, because if you're gonna do a violent Femmes video, well then you gotta at least do it in the right shirt. So that's why I'm wearing this Femmes shirt today, and this is all my opinion. So one warning is one thing I don't want is no nasty comments. So don't give me any nasty comments because of one of your favorite songs by them that wasn't included on this list. This is all my opinion, not yours. So I don't want any nasty comments, but I usually get pretty good feedback anyway. So, anyway, let's just get right into it, shall we? So this is basically my countdown of my top 10, which is basically sort of a collection of, a collection of songs from the band's discography, from their self-titled debut album all the way up to their most recent album, We Can Do Anything, which I did a review of not long ago. But yeah, anyway, let's just get right into the list, shall we? Number 10 on my list is the song from the band's latest record, We Can Do Anything, called Issues. And this song pretty much features everything the Femmes are all about: raw, intimate, acoustic production, and some pretty emotional lyrics. Like, the song features sort of classic Femmes sounds with this real rhythmic acoustic guitar, the signature Femmes rhythm section of acoustic bass guitar and snare and something they call the transophone, this chunky saxophone, and some little piano stabs going on in this track too, as well as the signature distinctive vocal from Gordon Gano, which I find his voice ages really well, because it doesn't sound overly too different from the way it sounded back then. It's just like his voice has aged in such a way that maybe Paul McCartney's voice has. And what makes this sort of a standout track is some of the lyrics on this track. It's about basically this guy who knows this girl who is so fed up with her mental issues. The protagonist is really tired of having to deal with her own issues being talked about constantly in front of him, but yet at the same time he is secretly drawn to her problems. So yeah, this is kind of a song, So yeah, this is sort of a song about how we're kind of strangely drawn to whatever is just, really, ticking off people around us. So yeah, it's kind of a, absurd kind of song, but at the same time very kind of emotional and honest too. So yeah, this is definitely a great song for sure, and has a really great chorus going on. Signature Femmes chorus with, of course, those classic harmony vocals from, Brian Ritchie, and in this case, Brian Biglione being the drummer on here. Number 9 on my list is the song I'm Nothing, which actually originally is on the 1994 album New Times. But the version I really like of this song is the one that's on pretty much the band's only full-length live record called Viva Wisconsin, which was a live album recorded in 6 different venues in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, like a bunch of old theaters and stuff like that, where they were sort of bringing back, where they were sort of going back to their roots of how they used to be an acoustic street band way back in the day before their self-titled debut. What really draws me in about this track is how sort of hilarious some of the lyrics on this track are. Like, it's sort of a song, sort of Gordon sort of commenting on this kind of crazy, sort of hard to comprehend sort of political world that we live in. So he's like saying, well, what's your reality? It's not real to me. What's your anomaly? It is my destiny. So he's sort of referring to how what, this sort of crazy world thinks is real. Smart people, would be like, well, that's not really the realistic way to look at life or anything like that. And, what you think maybe, just, sort of, anomaly or stuff like that, it's really kind of, destiny to like really intelligent people. So this is one of the most intelligent pieces on here. So he sort of does, cover topics such as like, and he sort of, covers different, topics like, politics and dirty tricks, and like, and then on another line he says like, are you a gay or are you a straight? Do you believe in love or do you believe in hate? So he's sort of wondering what's really going on in this sort of weird society that we're living in right here. But yet he does it in such a way that is really charming and kind of, funny. It originally was recorded as like a solo acoustic piece by Gano on New Times, but then there's the Viva Wisconsin version that has the full band involved. So of course you have Brian Ritchie's signature acoustic bass, as well as some real kind of pithy drumming from, in this case, the drummer was Guy Hoffman, who used to play with groups such as the Bodines and stuff like that. But I will admit that the full band version sounds a little better. I'm not really a huge fan of the band's 1994 record New Times. Even though, like, I'm Nothing, it was one of the, like, decent tracks on there, but I just felt maybe the recording was maybe a little too shallow. That's kind of one of my issues with that album, is that it's kind of, a little too kind of shallow in terms of production and maybe a little overproduced, even though the Femmes did solely work on that one themselves. But yeah, but the Viva Wisconsin version of this track I think is fantastic. Next on the list, at number 8, we have Gone Daddy Gone, which is a song from the band's self-titled debut album. Truly a classic by the band. Like, the lyrics are interesting. Like, they do have sort of that emotional depth to them. And I like how Gordon does throw in a Willie Dixon verse on there as well. But what really draws me into this track is that xylophone solo. This is one track in particular that features the Femmes sort of rocking out on a very unusual instrument. I mean, what other rock band would even think to put a xylophone on one of their cuts? And that's exactly what they're doing here. Brian Ritchie is playing a couple different xylophone solos, and they both sound very interesting and just, he just totally rocks it on the xylophone. And this is one track where when they perform it live, Brian plays the xylophone, so certain bassists like sit in for him. Most specifically and most often, Jeff Hamilton will play bass when they play the song live. Now. But back then they used to play it with, just the bass, and I will admit it didn't really sound as good as when they started using the xylophone live. I think the xylophone's actually quite a crucial part to the song, so that's what makes it number 8 on my list. Number 7 is the opening track from the band's second album, Hallowed Ground, called Country Death Song. And this is definitely one prime example of the Femmes' darker, more mysterious side. I mean, they're called the Violent Femmes, so it makes sense they'd have these kind of, creepier, sort of, more sort of vivid stories going on here. And this song is one example of that. In which this song features, of course, the classic Femmes instrumentation, but on the studio version, they also throw in a banjo as well, which I think is a really nice distinctive touch. Even though I did hear that someone at Slash Records did not like this track and said the piano ruined it, which this puzzled the band, and of course it puzzled me because there's no piano whatsoever on this recording. It's a banjo, but I think it sounds really good on there. So, but record label executives, their opinion could either make or break you. Could either make or break a little bit. But what really makes this song stand out is its real, just very dark and disturbing sort of story. This is the one track that I think opens the album in a way that totally makes sense, because it really does sort of show you that you're in for a darker Femmes album right here. The lyrics basically, Gordon Gano wrote them in the 10th grade study hall. I do know that. And it's basically, he read this article, which is about this man who intentionally threw his daughter into a bottomless well, and then of course he kind of starts feeling sorry for himself, and then he hangs himself because of the regret that he has after doing something so awful. So this is basically what the song is about. The man, he's got an ordinary life. He's just bored, and he has nothing to eat or drink. And then all of a sudden he gets so bored to the point where he just kind of loses his mind and starts making plans to kill his own kind. So he, takes his daughter out to go explore mountains, and then eventually he leads her to a deep black well, and of course he pushes her in the well, and of course she's screaming, but he never heard her hit. So it's quite a very heavy, really terrifying sort of situation going on with this track. So I think it's sort of moody, so I think it's sort of moody, sort of melody, sort of fits in with sort of just how vivid the storytelling is on this track. And then of course the guy blames himself for what he's done, and of course he and then he went out to a barn and hung himself. So yeah, that's basically the end of the sort of roller coaster ride that the story sort of takes us with this track. But at the same time, it's definitely a true, this golden gem from Hallowed Ground, and definitely one of the highlights on that record for me. My pick for number 6 is also on Hallowed Ground. It's the 8th track on that album, called Black Girls. And what I love about this track is how the band is not afraid to just improvise as long as they feel like it. I mean, apparently they're working with a producer who isn't just going to let them make a 3-minute pop song. They work with this guy named Mark Van Heck. He's not very notable, even though he did start sort of composing for video game music after solely working with the Femmes on their older albums. But this track, definitely one of the most enticing and dazzling moments on here, alongside Never Tell. I really feel the tracks that really dazzle on that record are its longer pieces. So yeah, this track, the lyrics are interesting, I'm not really sure what it's about, so I'm not really going to go into too big detail about that. But what really draws me in is the infinite improvising that they do. And instead of just boring the listener by just creating just a meandering solo, instead they include these saxophones that have this real stuttery, just, nervous, sort of, jittery vibe to them, as well as throwing in like a little horn solo via a cornetto, which, according to the liner notes, which I assume is just another, spelling for a cornet. So they throw that in there, and then of course, out of nowhere, we're also getting the use of a jaw harp played by Brian Ritchie on here, by far the world's most underrated instrument. And then of course, and then after that, you get like something that the band calls in the liner notes game calls. It's just basically just these sort of weird. It sounds like like game calls. It basically sounds as if it's basically what it would sound like if you were maybe screaming into a saxophone or something like that. That's kind of what it sounds like. And then just when you think the party's over, they throw in a slide bass and tons of different hand percussion as well, making this one of the most exciting and unpredictable Femmes tracks, not just from this album, but like of all time. So that's what makes it number 6 on my list. Okay, number 5, the classic, all you Femmes fans, including myself, know and love, and it says so on my shirt, American Music. This song originally is from the 1991 album, their 5th album from the Femmes, called Why Do Birds Sing? And, not a particularly big fan of that record, although I do think that its strong points in there were definitely the singles. And American Music is a perfect example of that. Just this track pretty much needs no introduction, which I think is kind of funny because there is no introduction to this song. Basically, basically it's just kind of a fun sort of very just joyous sort of song. I like how this really does show how the Femmes can once in a while have a real joyous side, but at the same time make it very tangible and not make it all cloyingly just cheesy or dishonest or anything. Although I do think the lyrics are kind of interesting. It basically, I'm not sure what he really means by American music, but still, if you're a huge fan, well then don't trust someone who doesn't like this track. The 4th pick on my list is the title track from the album, Hallowed Ground. And this track opens with a pretty interesting monologue from Gordon Gano that really sort of pulls you in, sort of knows you're in for one hell of a song. And indeed you are. It comes in with sort of this sort of, raw sort of, it's like more electrified on the album, but, when they play it live, it's more acoustic played. And this piano-laden number contains just Gordon Gano's lyrics that just have a kind of a sense for longing a little bit. He's like, he's got an issue. His soul, he feels, is in hallowed ground, and he feels the need to just kind of bury his regrets deep in it. So that's kind of what this song is about. And it has a nice little refrain on it from the other 2 members of the band, which happen to be, in this case, Brian Ritchie and Victor DiLorenzo. Which Victor DiLorenzo is a great drummer for the Femmes. He really got the whole sort of concept of just, instead of playing a full drum kit, just playing just a little bit, just playing a snare, a cymbal, and something that looks like and something that looks like maybe a crab barrel or something like that. My number 3rd pick, all you Femmes fans, this one needs no introduction for any of you, Blister in the Sun. This track definitely has it all. Just catchy hook, a very notable riff on it. And, of course, Gordon Gano's sort of, absurd, but at the same time very kind of honest and meaningful lyrics. Now, I did actually hear that the song actually is about masturbation, so it is kind of shocking there, but that is really what it's about. So it makes the lyrics maybe more absurd a little bit, but at the same time, of course, I really dig this track, and not really much more I can say about this one. Number 2, Add It Up. Classic right here. With, just a great guitar solo from Gordon, as well as just one of the most entertaining and interesting vocal performances on the whole record. He, whispers at one point, then he, yells at one point, and then, of course, at the beginning, he comes in with just this kind of pained, sort of nervous, sort of vocal. It's pretty raw on there. So, right away when he goes, "Take," right away we're in. We know we're in for, quite a sort of epic, folk punk track right here. So, yeah. Not much more I can say about that one. And here we are with our number 1 pick. So, drum roll. Number 1, Kiss Off. Great song right here. The lyrics on this track, definitely some of the best lyrics you'll ever find in a Femmes track. My favorite part is when he's just, one, because you left me. He's basically sort of obsessing over this sort of breakup that he's dealing with in one of the best ways possible, in one of the catchiest ways possible. And yeah, this is pretty much the quintessential Femmes song alongside Blister in the Sun. Their first album opens with arguably 2 of their best songs, Blister in the Sun and Kiss Off. So we're in for a good start there. And this track, is a catchy little chorus "do it all the time." Love that hook on there. And then, of course, Gordon Gano comes in with his signature, deep, sort of painful vocal, "I need someone, a person to talk to, someone who cares to love." It could be you. Could it be you? Yeah, and of course, really sort of weird, but at the same time, very, very cool solo in the middle. This track is only about a few minutes on the album, but then they extend it to 5 minutes on when they perform it live. I would admit, I think I like the Viva Wisconsin version maybe a little more than this studio recording a little bit. But yeah, just a fantastic track. And of course, the Viva Wisconsin version is pretty cool. I like how they sort of improvise on there as long as they feel like it. That's one thing that makes Viva Wisconsin a very, very enjoyable live record. One of my favorite live albums of all time. It's not just a generic series of just audio recordings of songs that are performed live. It's sort of a true, really just, interesting experience. And plus, at the end of this recording, the Femmes started to go a little crazy, and Brian Ritchie makes noises on an instrument called the theremin, as well as Guy Hoffman blowing very briefly into a bugle, really showing how sort of the band's sort of ending and sort of, the most sort of, sort of weird, but yet at the same time actually kind of cool sort of way. So, yeah, that's my top 10 Violent Femmes songs list. This is all my opinion, of course, so, as I said, no nasty comments because I didn't include something that you really like on here, but, yeah, I'm pretty sure that the next video that I'm planning on doing pretty soon is my 100th review, and it'll be a special one. It'll be a surprise, so, this is Joshua Kirk signing off.